Good evening. We will now call this special school board meeting for May 6, 2014 to order. Please rise for the pledge. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Announcements and executive session report. Just to notify everyone, this meeting is being taped, video recorded for distribution. Executive session report. The Board of School Directors met in executive session following our April 22nd, 2014 meeting to discuss matters of personnel. And the Board of School Directors met in executive session immediately prior to this special meeting on May 6, 2014 for discussion of matters of negotiations with the Teamsters and discussion of legal matter between John Andrews versus School Board Methacton School District on bond application to the DCED. By way of attendance, the following school board directors are absent: Mrs. Petraskis, Mr. O'Neill, and Mr. Roth. Do you have anything for Dr. Zerbe?
Thank you, Mr. President. This evening, we're just changing the order of the agenda. Typically, we would have public comment following presentations. So we have a presentation scheduled for this evening. I'm going to ask Mr. Whiteleather, our Director of Business Services, to make his way to the podium, and then ask the board as well if they would make their motion to the front seat for this presentation. So before Mr. Whiteleather begins, as an introductory to our presentation here this evening, this is a special meeting specifically designed to bring to the attention of our board a recommendation for outsourcing student transportation to First Student Incorporated. On our April 22nd meeting, 2014, we had Jim Woods and Randy Williams from First Student present the overall project plan as well as the transition plan and safety items to the public. This evening, Mr. Whiteleather is going to present an overview of the process. He's going to also talk about some of the benefits for the recommendation. And then we're going to follow that up with an opportunity for the board members to ask questions. Following the opportunity to ask questions, then we will open the floor for public comment on this particular action item. And as a reminder, there is only one other action item on the agenda for this evening. It's a gift and donation. So without any further ado, Mr. Whiteleather.
Thank you very much. What I have for you this evening is a presentation relative to overview of where we were from basically the beginning of this process through this evening. Why do we look to do a transportation assessment? If you recall back towards the latter part of last calendar year, we had made a public announcement relative to looking at a transportation assessment. What were the reasons for that assessment? I've listed down the left-hand side here some of the key categories relative to why we did this. First and foremost, no surprise to anybody, our PSERS, the state pension system. We've obviously entailed a significant cost relative to this. and it obviously is only going up from this point. Next year, the rate we'll contribute on behalf of our employees will be 21.4%. That'll be escalating to over 30% in the coming years, creating a significant financial burden for the school district. Capital needs. Relative to our bus fleet, we recognize, obviously, that the fleet that we have in place right now, relative to replacement and maximizing our reimbursement from the state reimburses us based on a number of criteria. Most importantly is the age of the vehicle. For us to get our vehicles down to a max age of 10 years, the district would have to incur $1.8 million in annual lease payments over the next 5 years to replace the number of vehicles that would be necessary to meet that 10-year maximum age. Technology, the cost to implement safety measures, for example, GPS, the global positioning system, student tracking, all these are high-cost items not only to implement but also to maintain, update, and obviously repair going forward. Operational cost. Looking back at the last 12 years, our operational cost for transportation department in total has increased by an average of 6.77%. And lastly, savings. Relative to the proposal that we received from First Student in evaluating our current runs in-house to outsourced, we recognize that we're looking at $4.9 million in savings over the 5 years. Features and benefits of First Student. Obviously, one of the biggest criteria as we go through evaluation of any one of the proposals that the district received from contractors for this operation is what do they bring to the table other than cost. Obviously, costs are a significant factor for all of this, but you also look at what else they bring to the table. So if you look on the left-hand side, you'll see the features relative to what First Student brings to the table. Operational efficiencies, they are the largest national contractor relative to student transportation, so that brings a lot of knowledge, experience, dealing with a multitude of issues to the table. Technology, for those who attended the last board meeting, got a feel for what First Student brings to the table. Anything relative to GPS tracking of our vehicles, route maximization, student tracking, a lot of key benefits that can be brought to the table as a result of their experience in the field of K-12 transportation. Obviously, they're a national leader in this industry. They bring a lot of key assets to the table that a national presence brings to this school district, to Methacton, and frankly to a multitude of others that they serve throughout the country. Long-term contract. Obviously, this is a key aspect to looking at transportation contracting, is stability within a contractor providing those services to you. You want to make sure that you have a long-term relationship with that vendor to ensure that your stability of your operations, continuity between what you're doing now to what you're doing tomorrow and frankly down the road is obviously a key aspect. And then most importantly, ongoing communications. I can't tell you, based on my experience, that the biggest issue that I've heard from anything that goes down a wrong path is that there was lack of communication. So this is a big thing for us. Obviously, the communication between the various levels of the community, the school board, our PTO, PTA organizations is going to be ongoing as we would move through this process. So that obviously is a very significant part of this. On the right-hand side, we look to the benefits. Obviously, we spoke about the significant operational savings over the short and long term relative to that $4.9 million that I spoke of previously. Employee recruitment. Obviously, we have an asset relative to our current in-house operations that are going to be obviously wanted by the contractor, and that's obviously a significant benefit for us in looking at that, wanting our assets, our drivers, and relative to moving on to the contractor. That's a key aspect of this relationship. Long-term presence and history in Montgomery County. First Student serves a number of school districts directly in Montgomery County, including some of our direct neighbors. Many of these relationships go back multiple decades, and long-term presence speaks volumes of a company and the relationship with the client. Capital investment in new vehicles. Obviously, as we look at budgets and long-term projections, we've spoken a lot about our long-term budget projection models. Capital investment in new vehicles is obviously a significant cost for us, and looking at the replacement schedule that we would have to match in order to match First Student's proposal, as I spoke about again earlier, is we would have to be looking at about $1.8 million of annual lease payments just to keep our vehicles within that 10-year maximum age limit. And then lastly, the technology enhancements. We spoke about GPS, student tracking, video recording equipment on the buses. All of these things are cost relative to what we would have to do in-house, and obviously the constraints that we have as an organization, and the benefits that national presence of a contractor like First Student brings to the table obviously is beneficial for us relative to those technology enhancements. Timelines. Where did we come from the beginning of this process to where are we this evening? If we look up at the very top on the left-hand side, the issuance of the RFP means request for proposals. That went out September 2nd, 2013. We had a deadline of due date of October 14th. We received 4 responses, which is actually very good. For transportation contracting. To get four contractors interested in your business is good. Of the 4 that we reviewed, 3 of them were interviewed. Of those interviews, we followed up with not only a detailed analysis of their proposal, but also actually I sat with several of the vendors directly and went over our analysis of their information to ensure that we were not missing something, interpreting something incorrectly, so that we would feel confident that the numbers we were bringing to the table for purposes of analysis were solid. This was followed by the January to May timeline, where we opened negotiations with our Teamsters relative to the scenario that we had in front of us based on the proposal we received from our contractor. That timeline was followed by here this evening, where we are recommending that we contract with First Student for our transportation needs as of July 1, 2014. If you look to the right, what's going to happen post-award? Now, obviously, there's a multitude of issues that are going to occur after award. However, some of the key highlights of that are obviously almost immediately, we're going to be ongoing implementation, communications with everyone, with students, with families, with the community relative to what's going on, what's happening, what information we need to get out to you so that everybody is understanding of the process. Again, the communications is obviously a key component here. May through August, we're obviously going to be going through a lot of logistical issues between the school district and First Student relative to the transition of operations. And then finally, as you can see, September 2nd, 2014 will be under this proposal. What we're recommending for you this evening would be the start of the 2014-15 school year with First Student. We wanted to keep this relatively short and to the point, but at this point, we'll be happy to answer any questions from the board.
Have them go back to their seats.
And we can go back to the seats. Thank you.
So at this point, we'd like to open the floor to the board members to ask any questions from either Stuart, myself, or Jim Woods or Randy Williams from First Student.
Questions from the board? Kim?
I guess my first question, I think your first slide, Stuart, you mentioned that operational costs, and could you explain a little bit about what goes into operational costs?
Yes, what we did is we took our current operations as we have them today. We priced out what we're doing internally. What are all of our costs? Everything from staff cost all the way through repair cost, basically the entire operation. We took the proposal from all the contractors, frankly, that responded to our RFP, and we calced out what their costs would be for us to provide the same level of service, inclusive of everything. Based on that analysis is where we came to the comparison of numbers. What are we doing now for today? What are we doing 2014 through 2018-19? That was the basis for the determination of comparison of cost.
Jim, go ahead.
Can you clarify the age of the fleet that we're replacing or in need of replacing?
We have 95 vehicles presently. The contract RFP response as provided by First Student would replace 72 of those vehicles over the 5 years. The average age of the vehicles to be replaced by First Student for next year will be 16 years of age. So that would be the replacement as provided through First Student's proposal.
So to clarify, just the vehicles being replaced would be 16 years old, but the total average age would be 8?
Approximately around 9 to 10 years of age.
Okay. Other questions? Brenda, go ahead.
What will be the relationship between the administration of the district and First Student? Who will be responsible for relationships with First Student on a regular, ongoing basis?
Right now, the district will maintain its transportation supervisor as well as a secretarial staff member within that office. First Student's management team will comprise of basically an on-site manager. That on-site manager would communicate directly with our transportation supervisor on any issues that would require resolution. Anything that would go beyond our transportation supervisor's control would either be directed to the building principal, myself, or whomever would be deemed the appropriate next step in that, depending on the issue, the circumstances, etc.
To piggyback off that, what's the threshold level of transportation supervisor handling it versus being moved up to the administration or building principal? Like what type of issue would go past the transportation supervisor?
Something that would pass the transportation supervisor would be like a disciplinary issue with the student. Information would be provided to the building principal relative to the issue that happened, circumstances surrounding that, and then the building principal or designee at that building level would then make the decision of what possible disciplinary action would occur for that particular student. But by and far and large, the majority of the day-to-day situations, routing issues, delayed buses, whatever the case is, are handled directly through that office and would not require an additional level of review.
Other questions? Kathleen?
Yeah, I just want to clarify that. I know we keep going back to this, but so let's say there was an issue with something on a bus. Do they go to our representative at the depot, or do they go to the First Union representative? Like who? I'm sorry, First Student. Sorry, First Student.
It's going to be a teamwork approach. I mean, you're going to have an office. The transportation facility will house both First Students staff as well as our in-house individuals. They'll be working seamless together as a team. So whatever issues that would be coming into that department would be worked through the various people working together. It's not as if one issue would go to our person versus another issue going to First Student. Everybody's working together as a team. What's the issue? What's the circumstances? What do we need to do from this point? Do we need to refer this to the building principal? Do we need to handle this internally? Is it a routing issue? Is it a disciplinary issue? Is it a vehicle repair issue? Is it a staffing issue? All these things are independently evaluated relative to where we need to then address it, whether it's addressed directly at the facility, the transportation facility, whether it's directed to me, directed to a building principal, directed to Dr. Zerbe, whatever the case may be.
So I guess more of what I'm asking is how is it different than it is today then?
Well,
how are
let
we
me
adding to
just
it?
jump in on, this might be helpful. I know Jim Woods and Randy Williams are here from First Student, and I imagine that, at least I know in your presentation a week or so ago, that you talked about there's a process that you have in place for reporting incidents, and maybe you can speak to that, Jim. Thank you.
Thank you. I do want to say that what Stuart said, it is a very seamless process, and we do this in many, many school districts where our staff are co-located with district staff. And when, if someone were to come in or call on the phone, our staff are well trained. They're very used to handling different things along that line. I think where it becomes a matter of policy, it automatically would go to the school district side of things. If it would be one of our employee issues, then we certainly would handle that from there. In terms of issues on the bus, did you want to hear about that? The system that we use, we call First Acts. It's an online program where certain district personnel that you authorize are given secured access to the server. Our staff will report any issues that come up. So, for instance, if one of our drivers has an issue on a bus, rather than fill out a paper form and take it into the school and find the administrator and walk it through that process, we'll put that report online, where it's then immediately shared with the authorized person at the school district. They can pull that up and deal with that right online, send email notification to a parent or to another staff member, and then also report back to us what happened. So in all these different areas, the school district remains the final authority. We really are, our job is to follow your policy and procedures.
All right, so can I ask, this might be directed at you. I know some of it's policy on our end, but one of the biggest questions I've been getting is do you have a maximum bus ride time for students that you usually deal with or that you usually set in place?
That is a matter of district policy, and we'll follow whatever you set. We make recommendations, but ultimately you're the authority.
And it is true that our intent, and based on the fact that we're having a management employee from the district be responsible for routing, we don't anticipate, unless there's some specific need for a child transportation need, that our routes would change.
Other questions? Brenda, go ahead.
So we've been talking about operational issues with regard to incidents on the bus or schedules or things of that sort. But what about on a higher level? Who is responsible to work with First Student from the standpoint of, if we as a district determine that one of the things they've said they're going to do isn't working generally, not a specific incident, who is our staff person?
I am the one responsible for that. Certainly, the management employee in the transportation area reports directly to Stuart, but as an issue of things that come before this board, I would be the one responsible for answering to that.
Jim, go ahead.
Thanks. And I'll springboard off of that a little bit. As far as the relationship, yeah, these are our employees, are still people that live in our community and so on, and we have to remember who they are. So this transition, I know, as far as the health care, as far as any retirement they may have, tax issues, is there anything that we're doing, or First Student is, that for outreach and give them advice on how to handle certain situations like that? Also, as far as coming back to the board, will First Student be coming back, giving us an update, just as any other department in the district? But I think it's very important that we still have the transition, and we're able to monitor and hear some issues that the employees may have as they're transitioning.
Those are two very good questions. Let me go with the second one first. We've discussed that on a monthly basis, primarily at our work sessions, which would be the third Tuesday of each month, that we would have Randy Williams reporting on or status, or possibly the local manager from First Student. So we've already planned to have that as part of our communication process back to the board on a regular monthly update for them and for the public. On the first question, Mr. Whiteleather, with regards to our transition plan, and maybe Jim, you might have some input on this as well. We are in the process of communicating with our employees if the board so chooses to affirm this recommendation here this evening. There are steps that we have prepared to make sure that everyone knows the information that is necessary for them to know in order to make the best independent decisions for themselves. Our recommendation and our hope is that each and every one of our employees involved in the transportation and this transition chooses to go with First Student. We believe that as part of this overall process, not only did we consider what was best for our students, what's best for our families, but certainly what is best for our employees. And but by far, from the evaluations that we've done on the three vendors that we reviewed, not only was First Student the lowest acceptable bid, but it was the only vendor that offered the type of transition that's commensurate with what we're proposing here this evening, to allow for a transition that would be suitable for the folks that live in our community.
I have two questions. Stuart, back to, I think, your first slide where you talked about the increases that we would see if we were to maintain our own operation. And I think your last line indicated that over 5 years we stand to save $4.9 million. Now, if you were to quantify that in some sort of a pie chart, could you define at all where that $4.9 million how that will sort out?
Well, there's a couple of significant components that feed into that overall savings. Obviously, the one item would be the PESERs. That cost component, obviously, you spoke about the significant cost increase of that leading into the future. Another big part of that is the vehicle replacement. Simply the cost of replacing our vehicles over the next 5 years to match the proposal as provided by First Student would be a significant increase in our overall operational costs comparatively to today. Just to give you a point of reference, our total lease budget for everything, which includes technology for our entire district as well as vehicles, all of our transportation vehicles, is currently $1 million a year. Based upon replacing our vehicles under the proposal as provided by our First Student, we would have to double that, in essence, double that budget just for our transportation. So we would have to then increase that even further to capture our cost for technology, computers, et cetera, technology throughout the district. And also you look at other components. Vehicle replacement leads into additional subsidy increases from the Department of Education. We're anticipating about $183,000 of additional revenue into the district as a result of having our bus fleet at a maximum age of 10 years. So there's a multitude of things that feed into that generation of that number, which then obviously looking over the 5-year trend comes to that $4.9 million number that I spoke of.
So it's fair to say that that $1.8 million that I think was quoted on that same slide to replace those buses to get back to the 10-year average, that $1.8 million is included in that 4.9.
Right. What we had to do, in fairness of evaluation of what we're doing in-house to what we would do with a contractor, you have to equalize everything. So if First Student is proposing that they replace 72 buses, we also have to do that in-house. Because we can't give an unfair advantage to ourselves and say, okay, contractor, you have to replace 72 buses, we're going to replace nothing. Because that's obviously giving them a higher cost component to deal with versus what we would do internally. So what I did in the comparison analysis, and one of the reasons that I met with all of the contractors is, let's go through this line by line to determine what it is that we're doing today, what you would do for us, and how that generates, what that generates for us, whether that's saving money, whether it's not. But obviously that was among many, that was a key component of the comparison, is equalizing the two.
Okay, let me ask, are our buses now equipped with GPSs?
No.
None of them?
Correct.
So,
correct.
So when we move in, I might be showing my technological ignorance here, but when we move into a first student mode, potentially all the buses would be GPS equipped? Would that then cascade into any technology upgrades otherwise in the district?
If it'd be fine for Randy or Jim to jump in, if you could review what we discussed on the 22nd regarding how the GPS actually will assist us with also the student tracking, and then additionally talk about the cameras.
But wait, before you do that, are you is that the question you're asking, or are you asking if there's going to be additional costs to us to
I guess I'm thinking in terms of, you know, when we were talking about the bring your own device at some point, we were talking about bandwidth and what, you know, what was manageable. And so I guess it just occurs to me, if we've got 95 buses suddenly with GPSs, does that influence our ability to do our other receiving and transmitting of data in the district?
What's the impact to what other things we're doing?
Right. Putting the GPS on the bus then provides additional services, technology services for our families. So that's what I wanted Jim to talk about. But in addition to the GPS being added, there are other technology services such as video cameras on all of our buses. Right now, Mr. Whiteleather, I don't know the number, but I know there's only a fraction of our buses that have the video surveillance on the buses. Is that correct?
That's correct.
Okay. So, Mr. Woods, if you wouldn't mind talking about what the GPS does and how that also enhances the opportunity for our parents.
Okay. So we really use the GPS system to manage our business. We're very active with it on a day-to-day basis. So our operations system is set up so that the GPS helps us to monitor what goes on, where the buses are, if they're running behind, if an employee is delayed in getting here. A benefit for the drivers is that they'll no longer have to fill out a paper form when they do their bus inspection. They'll have a handheld computer. They walk around the bus. They'll do inspections in each zone, and once they finish their inspection, that information is fed up through our network back to the central server, where it's reported to our maintenance department so that they can do maintenance on the bus, and our dispatch is notified if the bus is down. So a lot of that is transparent to the parents in the district, but that's all going on behind the scenes. It helps us to be able to answer questions. So when a parent calls and asks us or reports that the bus didn't show up, we can confirm that the bus did or did not show up there, and we can let them know that the bus, you know, showed up at 7:35. The driver waited for 3 minutes, and then they pulled out. So it really is fact-based. Gives us very proof positive what the buses do or do not do. We tie that all together. The maintenance. We also have a customer interface for that, so that we are very transparent to you as our customer. You have the ability to go onto our system and look and see where the buses are. And one of the more new and exciting things in technology is what we refer to as Z-Pass. It ties onto our Zonar GPS system, and that's the student tracking component. So each student would carry an RFID card, radio frequency identification, and that would basically check them in when they get on and off the bus. So that, again, is information that the district has access to and enables us to really confirm when students get on and off the bus. Again, it helps us to answer questions and gives access to that for the school district as well. An item that First Student has that we use on top of that is an access process we call My First Pass. It is a parent portal that gives a parent access to their students' information as to when they get on and off the bus. So via their smartphone or a web interface, they can also get on to the system and find out that their student got on and off the bus. And all these systems all tie together. It also can be, we expect, a benefit to the Medicaid billing for the district, because we can provide information about special needs children who get on and off the bus as well.
And just for information for the board, I just want you to know that all the technology that Jim has referred to is part of the proposal. However, the district still needs to make final determination of if and when any of that technology gets rolled out. So we haven't made those decisions yet, and that's certainly something that, you know, we need to bring, you know, more people to the table before we make those decisions and evaluate that technology for what it is and what it can possibly do. But those are just some things to answer your question. But once the GPS is on there, it could theoretically open up the doors for more information to alert parents or possibly even students that the bus might be 5 minutes behind, and therefore they didn't miss the bus. It's just, you know, that type of thing. So those are the types of things that we're thinking about. We certainly haven't made decisions on how to implement those things, but they are part of our proposal. And so if we choose to do that, we can then move forward with that process. The other part of this, Jim, if you could talk about some of the video, we'd be able to fix all of our buses with video technology. Is that correct?
Correct. So all of these things we've talked about, we've included in the pricing that we gave the district. So we're ready to make sure the district is 100% outfitted with video cameras. If your policy allows for audio recording, then they'll have audio recording on them as well. So the video cameras, two-way radio communication, all of that 100% is going to be covered by First Student going forward. We'll also add on to each one of the district buses a system we call Child Checkmate. Also have a Theft Mate component as well. The Child Checkmate is a fairly simple system that requires that the driver at the end of their route, when they get up out of the seat, that they walk to the back of the bus and they disable this alarm system. If they don't, then the alarm system sounds and the lights flash on the bus. There's a voice that comes on and basically assumes that there's a student on the bus, and it notifies them to sit tight because an adult's going to come to take care of them. So if somebody does forget to check, this is a backup system. We now integrate that backup system with our Zonar GPS so that our dispatch office and our management are also notified that there is a potential dangerous situation, so they can address it immediately.
So going back to Kim's question, what are additional upgrades or costs that the district may have to incur in order to utilize any or all of these services, in bandwidth costs or other equipment costs? Maybe it's all web interfaces, so there's not an issue there, but that's something that, if that wasn't what you were asking, that's what I kind of got as we talked through this. So.
That's not what I understood. I thought, okay,
my apologies, I missed that. That's a great question. One of the things that we've done, and we've got 700 locations throughout the United States. We have a very large IT department. We actually outsource the majority of our IT because frankly, we're not experts in IT, but we really need IT. So both for the sake of having our own bandwidth and for security purposes, we would come into your facility and we would add in our own wiring, our own internet access. We have a secure Cisco router that we put in place that enables our office staff, our dispatchers, and our maintenance to tie in behind our private network. So that's a cost that we'll bear. We'll bring in the wiring and everything to support that.
Thank you. Thanks. Other questions from the board?
Yes. With that, I think you just said that this was not, I think I want to jump on Kim's question as well, but I think you just said over here was that you put out the RFP, but is this technology included in the price of?
Yeah, you just said it was.
Absolutely.
So we haven't made.
But how is it?
We haven't made a decision if we do this, we haven't made a decision to utilize all of it, but it's all included in the pricing. So then the district has a decision to make around, if we do this, what we do. So it's a menu.
And do we have an idea of what type of cost it would cost us to utilize if we decide to utilize that?
There is no cost. The cost well, you would have to have an end-user device, which we have computers for our staff, and we have, according to what Jim said, the application can also be accessed via a smartphone. So it would be, username and password authenticated in order to access those resources. So when we talk about cost, it would be whatever end-user equipment that we currently would have in place to access all of our technology resources would be the only expense that I would see we would have, which would be negligible until we go through the process of refreshing our equipment.
So there should be no incremental costs other than the costs that are included in the first student costs and our typical IT costs.
And do we have staff that can do that, or would that be coming out of the depot?
The day-to-day management of that from our side of things would be done by our staff. I would hope that it would actually save the district some time in that there are certain things you won't have to pick up the phone to call us and ask a question because you'll be able to access that from the computer. So it can be a time savings in that regard, and paper.
At that point, I think it's a management issue, right? We have to figure out who has access to what and who uses what daily. So, other questions from the board? No? Okay. Thank you. Okay, at this time, we will move on to item number 5, public comment on board action items. Public comment?
Peter Schlenker, Lower Providence. I have a couple questions. Would the district be selling the fleet or leasing the fleet to First Student? And if so, what would be the status of the buses that are replaced during the contract if they're sold, or if they're leased, whichever? Would First Union then own those new buses, or would the district own those new buses? Whose name is going to be on the buses? That's a very important factor for me, not so much anymore. My kids are all older. But elementary school students on a field trip get separated. Methacton School District bus is something that points out to them where they need to be. First Student, quite frankly, wouldn't, because there probably will be 6 school districts at that location with First Student buses. I do have an insurance question. I hope the board looked into this. I have only seen what's been printed in the newspaper and put out publicly. But would there be an insurance rider from First Student protecting the school district in the event of an accident or driver misbehavior? And the last one has to do with first off, I'm against the RFID for the students. But I know that's not a point at this point in time. But who would be footing the bill for the students to have the RFID? Would First Student be supplying those to the students, or would the school district have to supply that? Thank you.
Yep. Sure. Yeah. So we have a couple questions. Mr. Whiteleather, on the sale or lease, could you respond to that for us, please?
Right. The district has the decision or discretion to sell the buses, retain the buses, sell a portion of them, the multitude of various options. The overall savings of $4.9 million as presented is inclusive of the sale of our fleet. What would happen under that scenario is First Student would take ownership of our entire transportation fleet, and then from that point forward, they would replace vehicles that would be owned by First Student. They would not be retained in any way, shape, or form by the school district.
Could you address the insurance rider?
The insurance is provided by First Student, was a requirement of the RFP. The insurance would list the Methacton School District as additionally insured. What that means is that the school district would be covered under the circumstances of something requiring insurance to address. I want to be, obviously, with insurance-related matters, anybody can sue anybody at any time for anything, but relative to insurance coverages provided to the school district through First Student, yes, those were provided and do provide full coverage to the school district.
And then the next question, or one of the questions, the name on the bus. We too agree with your statement, and certainly that was one of our requirements. Whether they take over the fleet initially and when they purchase new buses, we will have Methacton School District on the bus as you see it today. However, there will also be, I believe, on a lower portion by the driver, it'll say something to the fact it'll be operated by. And but we agree with that, and we thank you for that comment. And the last one is the RFDI. I think that was just a statement, not necessarily a question. So we haven't completely evaluated that process yet. We just wanted to make sure that our board and our public are aware that there are some interesting and possibly plausible technology enhancements that can really assist our parents and our students as part of this process. So we need to evaluate those first.
Okay.
Joe Ferrero, 12 Pine Tree Drive. You stated that you are outsourcing your IT. Where are you outsourcing to?
I believe it's CompuCom.
And where are they located?
They work out of some of them are in our Cincinnati office.
Or are they overseas outsourced? So these are Americans who are here, but we're just outsourcing from local Methacton people out to Ohio, is what you're saying?
Well,
local people to Pennsylvania over to Ohio.
So, all of the employees here would be community.
Would be community, but you're outsourcing to someplace else rather than having just your IT, but you guys don't do IT.
We don't, in our locations, our operating procedures, we don't have IT people at every location. Even if we had it in-house, we would have a centralized IT department located at our headquarters, most likely. But we took that away, kept it within the United States. A good many of the CompuCom folks are in our Cincinnati office, but we have them scattered across the country, Washington State, Connecticut, different places. Okay. So we have a regional footprint, but we don't have, our basic operating premise does not have local IT people in our sites.
All right. Thank you. The idea of the RFID, tagging our kids for tracking purposes as civil liberties goes is abhorrent. You cannot do this in a free society. You can't track our kids like this. What happens if a kid goes someplace that an administrator doesn't like? Is that kid going to get disciplined when he comes back to school if he's doing something off hours? That's what happened in Lower Merion. A kid was using a computer, and the kid got rung up by the administrators, and the parents turned around, sued the school district, and it was big bucks for the school. So just opening this door, or even thinking about looking at this door for RFID, and over technology, there's a level where technology needs to be used. I do this every day. My business is technology. You use technology to help you. You don't overuse technology for the sake of technology's sake. Because someone's 5 minutes late, you don't have to go berserk for a $100,000 IT system to say, bus is going to be 5 minutes late. It makes no sense. Spend the money where you got to spend it properly. You're going to turn around and you're going to say, in this analysis of $4.9 million that you strangely analyzed towards these guys with the bus thing that you're talking about that you didn't factor in properly. We're going to end up spending more money to give away jobs, for these guys to pay the bus drivers. It's going to be a pay cut for these people, so we're paying less to get less, and we're putting our people through the ringer. We can do this in-house. I don't understand why we don't have the intelligence in-house inside the Methacton family to do this right. These are our neighbors. Let's not rook our neighbors over to say we know the price of everything and the value of nothing. Thank you.
Certainly, I understand your applause, but I did say earlier that, although we have the RFDI process and are talking about technology, we have not made that decision to do that. I said that we need to evaluate those options, and we need to do that in a timely fashion. So there has been no decision made with relationship to doing it or not doing it. But I will say that we have, and I said this earlier, we have made decision, at least administratively, as part of this recommendation, and we considered all aspects of this recommendation, including our employees. And I said that, and I mean that, and I don't know what else I can say regarding that. Now, Mr. Williams, it sounds like you might want to say something regarding the technology piece again.
Yeah, I want to clarify the RFID technology. It's not the same as what you think of when you think of Walmart, so they can follow the tea bags wherever they are in the country. This RFID technology, all it reports is that the student got on the bus, on which bus, and at what time, and they got off the bus and at what location. So it doesn't say that Randy Williams got on the bus at Methacton High School and at 7 minutes later he's on Germantown Pike and Plymouth Road. It will just give you on the bus at what time, whether that's at home in the morning or on the bus in the afternoon, and what time and where I got off. So it's not a continuous tracking as a lot of people would think.
Okay. Additional public comment on board action items. Mr. Andrews.
John Andrews, Lower Providence. With regard to this RFID tag, is it something that the child carries, or is it something that is implanted in the child's body? Sorry. I had sent a letter to Mr. Phillips a week ago, and I kind of got an answer in that several of the directors who also may have seen that email queried about bus age. And I checked the numbers in the request for a proposal that showed that the average age of the buses is 8 years as of last September. And I understand that First Student would replace any bus that's over 7 years old. Now, some of our buses are like 14 years old. And, I've always thought that a diesel engine is a rugged engine. It happens to be a little heavy also, but the state subsidies, which Mr. Whiteleather brings up as being a factor, you get a higher subsidy if you get a new bus. Well, the district's practice in paying for buses is to buy them and then do a leaseback arrangement over, let's say, 5 years. And if the district, through good maintenance and good drivers and low mileage and all of that, still has buses that at 14 years old are running well and they've been paid for a lot of years, I think that's an example of Methacton doing it right. And I think that the claim that we get a higher subsidy if either we or an outside contractor go out and buy new buses, the issue is if you have if you keep your bus age to let's say 7 years or less, you're going to be paying more for buses, whoever owns them. I have a Camry, and it's a well-made vehicle. I bought it in '97. You can calculate how old it is. yeah, I have to replace a timing chain again, but the car is running well. And am I saving money versus buying a new car every 4 years? Absolutely. So I think that the claim that we're going to get a higher subsidy is totally fallacious. We're going to be paying more for those buses, whoever owns them. And if an outside vendor owns the buses, we're going to be paying them some return on investment. Let's say it's 8%. We're going to be paying them, for starters, we're going to be paying them $700,000 a year. Whereas when we buy the buses, we don't demand a return in cash from somewhere as an expense of bus ownership. We get a subsidy, but the subsidy from the state is intended to pay off the cost. It's like covering the depreciation. And the question was asked about how does Methacton get revenue from the sale of these buses? I believe that the current value of the bus fleet is on the order of $3 million. And something was said to the effect that, well, somehow that's built into the $4.9 million savings. Well, I'm not sure there's savings, because comparing the proposed budget to the current year's budget, the transportation account, 2,700, goes from $6.9 million in the current year to $7.2 million in the next year. So I don't see 1/5 of a $4.9 million savings over 5 years in the proposed budget. I think
start to wrap up, please.
I can start to wrap up, but I remind you that the 2-minute rule applies to courtesy of the floor. The public has been invited to ask questions, and if the public happens to have 6 questions
And I'm trying to give the
that are
public
interesting,
opportunity to ask questions.
Let him speak.
So please start to wrap up.
Mr. Nascimento, I think I make myself clear. The Sunshine Act provides penalties for municipal officials that do not allow reasonable time.
And I'm allowing reasonable time.
What you might say is that, could you cut it off, and later on, if there's time allowed, someone can come back for a second time. But that's not in your policies. And if the solicitor wants to offer some thoughts here, he may.
Mr. Anders, well, thank you. I appreciate that, but the board will let me speak anyway, so I appreciate that. But let me just suggest to you that you stick to whatever questions you have. The board does have the right to make reasonable regulations with respect to speaking, and time limitations with respect to speaking have always been upheld. So as far as your comments are concerned, the board is not in any respect violating the Sunshine Law by placing the reasonable restriction on you as to speaking time. Why don't you finish your question, sir, and let's get away from debating the legal issues.
Thank you. And I'm also wondering if there is a federal rule, I believe it's called the 60-day warn, that employees are liable to lose their job en masse. Now, technically, the employees would be losing Methacton jobs and acquiring jobs outside. So I think there's a question of, does the 60-day warn notice apply in this situation? The other thing is that Mr. Whiteleather indicated there'd be Peaser's savings. The first student presentation last week made 0 mention of pensions, and I'd like to know if first student, what kind of pension plan would be available to these current Methacton employees if and when they are picked up by first student. And I think also a proposal was made by First Student. We have not seen what the costs would be year by year for the services they provide. So I don't think we have a full picture, and I don't know if the board has a full picture as to the costs, you know, how much would be paid out to First Student fiscal year by fiscal year. Thank you.
Okay, I believe there was someone in the back that, okay, Blue, thank you.
Hi, my name is Gabby Winters. I'm a parent of an elementary school kid in Methacton. My general question was, to compare apples to apples, Mr. Whiteleather said that you took, I may be wrong, you took First Student's proposal and kind of mocked what it would cost Methacton to do what First Student proposed. Is that correct? No. Okay. My question is, some of these costs, like we said, all this technology is included in their quote and in that $4.9 million we're saving, but it seems to be a lot of stuff to me that we don't need. So I want to know what, if we were just doing what we needed to do, and I'm a parent, we don't need all that technology, just what we've been doing for the past however many years, how much money are we really saving? That's really my question.
The comparison between what we're doing today as a Methacton school district to what First Student would do for us, I think it was just a reversal of what you had stated. We copied we took First Student's cost to us, copied the exact same what we're doing today as Methacton School District, and priced that out under First Student's proposal. I believe the second question was relative to those additional technology components that are offered by First Student. While we don't have specific breakouts of those costs as part of the proposal from First Student, one would reasonably conclude if they were not to offer additional technology enhancements, that would then reduce their cost to us, thereby increasing the savings between what we would be doing in-house to what we would be doing outsourced. Would that be a reasonable?
That's reasonable.
You have a follow-up to your question? Can we just let her do that real quick?
Sorry. So I just want to clarify here. We told First Student how we operate. And we asked them if we continue to operate this way over the next 5 years, replacing things when we normally did, not adding any technology, they came back with their proposal that said this is what it would cost for us to do what you're doing, not where they came up with a plan to do what they think they should do, and then we kind of figured out what it would cost Methacton to do what they proposed. That's, I mean, maybe I just don't understand.
That's a very good question. No, it's an excellent question. What First Student did for their proposal to the Methacton School District is they established a daily cost associated with our various runs. And what do I mean by that? We have normal AM, PM runs, we have midday runs, we have extracurricular, we have athletic. So all of those components were priced out from First Student just on either an hourly basis or a per day, per vehicle basis. Like, for example, a 72 passenger bus would cost Methacton School District $200 a day. So what we did administratively is we took First Student's cost per vehicle matched what we do now to generate the dollar amount that it would cost for us for First Student to provide the same level of service as we have today. So First Student didn't generate the dollar amount to Methacton School District in total. First Student provided what it would cost Methacton School District to have each level of bus, depending on the size of the vehicle, extracurricular runs, athletic runs, etc. Basically, if you kind of envision it as like an a la carte list, from that a la carte list, we had to pull off what vehicles we would need to provide certain services based on what we're doing today to generate that dollar amount for the comparison between in-house to outsourced.
Can I have one question? Our buses currently do not have GPS?
Correct.
Okay. I'm going to, as a grandparent of a student, I just want to pass this along. My grandson was supposed to come home at, we'll just say 2:30. And I went down to the bus stop and he was not there. The bus was not there. I waited, half an hour went by, he was not there. I called transportation to find out where he was. They had no idea where my grandson was on that bus. Now, do you know what it's like to be a parent or a grandparent and not knowing where your child is? So, I'm sorry, having a GPS on a bus and being able to call and find out where that child is and knowing if that bus is late, it is something that I think we need to have for the safety and sanity of our parents.
GPS on the First Student bus down in Darby.
Okay,
Yeah.
please.
I have a question.
Okay. Ladies and gentlemen, please.
My name is Joe Bickelman from Audubon, Pennsylvania. I hear a lot of talk about the technology, how it's going to make our kids safer. First of all, I had 3 daughters go through the Methacton School District, and I want to thank the bus drivers here for safely transporting my 3 daughters. There was, I don't know if any of the board members do research now. You can just go on the internet if you want to find out about a prospective hire or somebody. You type in their name and see what comes up. Well, there's been situations on the internet and on Action News, one being down in the William Penn School District, where a First Student was involved in a case where they didn't have enough bus drivers, so they pulled the mechanic to drive the bus. And this mechanic decided to drop kids off ranging from kindergarten, I believe, to 6th or 7th grade, they said on Action News, at one of the busiest intersections down there in the Darby Township, Upper Darby. And the way First Student became aware of it was through the mother calling the district and First Student to see where her kindergartner was. The driver went to jail because he decided to drop them off because he had somewhere else to go. That never happened in Methacton School District. There's another incident on the internet, anybody can do it, where a memo was leaked from someone in First Student talking about bonuses that are paid out to managers at First Student to cut corners, to cut costs. And there were pictures on the internet of rusty buses, things that weren't taken care of, things that were in disrepair. And that's another incident that was on there, on the internet, if you wanted to check some things out. It's not the rosy picture that we're hearing. So I'd like to know, how did the GPS fail in Upper Darby? How did it fail that you didn't know where those kids were or where that bus was? So that's one of my questions. The other is the retirement costs. Mr. Whiteleather says 30+%. Well, the public needs to know that the district gets back half of that 30% from the state. The net cost to the district is 15%. And it might be useful to see numbers instead of percentages. So that's another thing that the public needs to be aware. It's half of that 30% that falls on the taxpayers. The other question I have is about unemployment compensation. Mr. Whiteleather, are we reimbursable for unemployment compensation on the reimbursable method?
Yes.
So if the drivers are hired by First Student July 1st of 2014, and they collect unemployment for 8 weeks in the summer, where do those unemployment costs fall? On First Student or on the district?
Unemployment operates on a, this is going to get a little involved. Unemployment operates...
Where do the costs fall?
Well, you have to look, for purposes of answering your question, the way unemployment works is there's a look-back period. The look-back period is 1 year minus the current quarter you're in. So for the first operational year, under this proposal that the board is being recommended to approve, what will happen is that first year, the Methacton School District will be liable for a significant portion of the overall unemployment cost for the first year. The reason I'm trying to explain this, and it gets a little involved, is as the further you progress away from the time they would leave Methacton School District employment and be employees of First Student, Methacton would be held liable for less of the unemployment cost. For example, we'd be on 100% for first quarter, maybe 75% for the second period of time they would collect unemployment, so on and so forth, down to 0%.
Okay, let's just do an estimate. We're just going to do an estimate here. 100 drivers collecting $573 a week. That's $57,000. Times 8 weeks in July and August of this year. So 8 times 60,000 is what? $480,000 of unemployment costs that will fall on the district. Am I correct? With that estimate.
Yes, we have looked at the unemployment costs relative to the potential, and it's all subject to what the total exposure is. We've calculated the cost relative to unemployment that the school district would incur as a potential of this
What was your
scenario.
number? What number did you come up with?
I came up with $451,000.
That's a cost to the district.
Yes.
Right?
That would be correct. That would be the cost incurred by the district.
The other thing I'd like to bring up, I was in school business for 35 years. My last 15 years was Chief Financial Officer at Colonial School District. When there's a budget crisis, a budget crisis in the district where you're actually out of money or running low on money or running at a deficit, there is something we called a shared pain that permeated through the district, okay? This meant no raises, cutting back budgets across the district. But in this district, we've offered up, I want to say, financial human shields. For example, the food service department was outsourced. Next on the list is the transportation department. And this is in light of teacher raises approximating 3% for 3 years, less of a contribution for their benefits, which added money to their pockets. Am I correct? Yes. Less of a premium contribution?
Yes. The current teacher's contract did not decrease the amount they contribute towards their benefits from the previous contract. It actually increased it over the term.
But they had savings due to the consortium, I believe? Yes. Is that what happened?
The consortium rates as provided to the Methacton School District for the renewal as of July 1, 2014 are decreasing.
Yeah, my wife was paying $360 a month in premium contributions. That went down to $180 a month, according to the Me Too clause for the CEA, right?
The Me Too clause for what? There was no Me Too clause in the teacher's agreement.
Yes, there was.
No, why did my wife's premium contribution get cut in half in March?
Is your wife a teacher or a support staff member?
She's a transportation person, bus driver.
The transportation contract in present form does include a Me Too clause. The Me Too clause refers to whatever would be negotiated with the MEA, the teachers. The Teamsters would be eligible for that same percentage co-premium, which is the reason why there was an adjustment for the Teamsters, as well as the MESPA support staff as well.
Okay. So the shared pain didn't happen here at Methacton School District. Teachers received almost 3% a year for 3 years. Administrators received a raise. Secretaries received a raise for 2 years. And there's a lot of talk about no money. And then there was a certain administrator that received a raise last July, had a mid-year increase this year, retroactive to last July. How does that happen in a budgetary crisis situation? I don't understand it. What I'm most concerned with is what failed the child safety component in GPS at First Student. Because watching that on the news, I said, how can something like that happen in this day and age? So that's what I'm concerned with.
Mr. Bickelman, is that correct?
Yes.
I'm sorry. I would like to ask Randy or Jim to respond to that, because safety is important to us, and certainly you're correct. Right. You could probably look at any organization and Google them and have positive plus negative stories, and I appreciate you.
Yes, we haven't heard the yin and the yang. We just heard the yin.
I just said I appreciate that you bringing that up. Randy, would you please, if you don't mind?
The situation that you brought up was a very, we were just as outraged by that as anybody. First of all, that employee was not a mechanic, they were a utility person, but all of...
Meaning what? What did they do?
Please, can we let him speak, please?
Every employee at First Student is licensed and trained to operate a school vehicle. Because in situations where you may have driver shortages, you have to ensure that all students can get to and from school safely and efficiently. The GPS did not fail this situation. This driver chose to stop a vehicle. GPS is not out there for us to sit and watch 150 vehicles at all times. GPS is there so that if we know of an issue, we know of a situation, we can pull up. So a parent calls and says, hey, the bus didn't pick up Randy Williams this morning at 7:52. Pre-GPS, we would call the driver and say, hey, were you there to pick up Randy Williams? Yes, I was. Parent says, no, they weren't. So you have a 50-50 shot at who's telling the truth. GPS enables us to unequivocally either defend the driver and say, we have a record that that bus sat in front of your house for 2 minutes or 3 minutes, and that driver was there. We apologize, you'll have to get your student to school, and the bus will be there again tomorrow. Or the bus wasn't there and we apologize, figure out if we send a bus out, and then deal with the driver to understand why they did not show up at that stop. So it will actually help as much as what everybody considers Big Brother hinder. In that situation in Darby, again, GPS didn't fail. The employee who was properly trained in not only company policy but also state and federal laws and guidelines chose to ignore what they received in training and chose to ignore state and federal law. So that employee is facing some serious charges, and we will not defend that employee because they went out beyond the bounds of what they were trained and legal to do. That employee has agreed to come back to work. We will not allow that employee back to work until that settlement or the legal case is settled. So GPS didn't fail that. The employee failed their responsibilities.
I did a review of the approved budget for this year and the proposed budget for the upcoming 14-15 school year. And the numbers, I concur with Mr. Andrews, is it? There is on the salary category under transportation, there is budgeted a 5.3% raise in the salary category. Now, I know that might include a projection for additional runs for next year, or things like that, or something, you know, that is a salary increase. So that it shows as a 5.3% increase. Also in the budget, there's a projected fund balance, a surplus of cash at the end of next year of over $4 million. That's going to be left over at the end of next year, the projection. If this deal goes through, I think the 2.5% real estate tax increase that's proposed should go away. The influx of cash for the sale of the fleet should be used to reduce the tax burden of Methacton School District for a change. Reduce it. Don't even put it to zero. See if you can give the taxpayers a break in the district and have it go down. So use some of that cash to give the taxpayers a break. I want to thank you for your time, Mr. President, and nice job. Another thing, one thing, I think the public should know what the details are of the deal. I think they should see an analysis of what the payments are going to be to First Student, the numbers, and give a presentation on the numbers, not percentages, the dollar figures.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Charles Falco, 32-year resident of the district. I'm also a bus driver, and I'm also the Teamsters Chief Shop Steward. We have many drivers here represented tonight. There's one thing I've understood my whole life. But by the way, I've met some board members. I haven't met you all. I want you to understand about we've gone through the last 4.5 months in our contract negotiations. The one thing I understood my whole life, my whole entire life, the one thing I was good at was cost. I understood what it takes to run a business. I understood why sometimes you got to make hard decisions. What I want you to realize is that the cost you got at jeopardy here is 100 drivers. That's your cost. These people live, a lot of them in the district. They depend on this job. They depend on their PZers. They depend on a lot of things from this district. Losing it hurts a lot of them. Yes, we're guaranteed our hourly rate, and we're guaranteed some type of medical package, which is very, very nice to have these guarantees, but it's still not what we have. That's something I want the board to take into consideration. When we were in negotiations, one of the things we offered was a zero cost, never done before in all the years I've been a union member, a zero cost to the district over 5 years. You asked anybody if they've ever done a zero cost for 5 years. 5 years at zero, at nothing, not costing you guys any more than it costs you today to run us. We were making sacrifices to give that to you. Now, it's tough to come up with $5 million. That's a tough thing to do. But it's still a zero cost for 5 years, and then what do you ask us in 5 years from now? That's the other thing we got to look at. What happens then? Okay, we know what may happen, but we're willing to take the risk. Some people in this place don't like me very much now because of these contract negotiations. And I'll tell you what, it hits me hard because I take this very personal. I sit up at night, my wife sometimes even wonders why I do it. I do it because I love helping people. And I want you, the board, with your vote tonight, to think about that. To think about these 100 drivers and 3 mechanics and two dispatchers that you're going to affect. It's going to affect their lives some way, somehow. Maybe financially. Maybe big time financially. We love Methacton. We love driving for Methacton. We love our parents. We love our children. And I don't think there's one of these drivers out here that literally would not put their life on the line for these kids and these parents. So please, this is not, I don't really have a question for you. I just want you to understand. I don't know, I didn't meet all of you. I just wanted you to understand what we went through. And we're willing to go back to the negotiating table if we have to. Thank you for your time.
Candy Oliver, Eagleville. My question is, are things really that bad in the transportation department that we have to outsource it?
No.
No. Thank you. I put two children through this school district. I am a parent. 26 years of them riding the school buses in this school district. I had two in-laws that were bus drivers in this school district. Yes, there was times when the bus was late and the weather was bad and I was standing out there with my children waiting for the bus. There were days the bus was late coming home, a half an hour because there was an accident somewhere and the bus was stuck. Those buses have radios. They can communicate to the transportation department if that has changed any. I have never had a problem getting through the transportation department to find out what the problem was. And one thing you got to realize, the traffic in this school district has increased terribly. It is horrible, but the times have not changed for the buses to pick up and get to their destination. My question is, what is going to happen to our bus drivers who are residents in the school district, who are taxpayers? What is going to happen to them in the next 5 years? Are we guaranteed in 5 years that they're going to continue their 5-year contract? We've heard all the pros about First Student tonight. We've heard no cons. 2 weeks ago, we saw a presentation. The timeline was it was started to discuss in September. There has been no public discussion about transportation. The discussion was done in that room. And as far as the Sunshine Law, you're not being legal, you're not abiding by law, and Mr. Bartle can argue with me. This is comments on the agenda. Now, according to the settlement, the Sunshine Law, and Reading Eagle, you are doing the public a disservice. We are taxpayers. We don't know what this is going to cost us. And as far as the teacher's contract, there's been no public discussion about that. A tentative vote was taken in September. That's the last we were told about it. Now, the next thing, you're going to outsource the teachers? That's who you need to outsource. Because you're raising our taxes to pay their salaries. Everyone's getting a raise. I don't see them getting it. I trusted these people with my children. Every day I put them on a bus. I don't trust them with the teachers. I had to put trust in these people. And my children went to school and came home safely. And I don't want to see what happened to them, what happened to the lunch ladies when they were outsourced to save us money. And I'm not seeing the savings. These huge savings Dr. Quinn said we were going to get. We have not seen the huge savings. First Student needs to give us the cons. I read the articles in the paper, what happened with the First Student bus drivers in Norristown School District. I don't want to see that happen to the kids here. But as far as GPS, I'm sure every student in this school district has a phone with a GPS on it. And their parents can find them. Now, technology, we want to spend thousands of dollars to upgrade the technology in this building. Maybe you should put it in the transportation department. But you need to bring the community in on this. The community. That means the taxpayers, not the parents, not the students. You know, Peasers is an argument you're hiding behind. It's not our fault about Peasers. We had nothing to do with that. But we're getting on the hook for it. And now it's for the safety of the students. You're hiding behind that. Our students have been safe since the day Methacton opened the school district. In 26 years, I've never heard of a major problem. There was one at Arcola with a student with a knife, and it was a girl, and it was taken care of immediately. There's cameras on the bus. They watch the bus drivers all the time. I agree with cameras on the bus. It protects the bus drivers. It protects the students. But you need to seriously consider this, and you need to take your time. Are you trying to save money so we can put in a turf field? Is this what this is about? You need to be honest with us.
Wow, she pretty much took everything I was going to say. My name is Karen Maycourt. I'm a Methacton school bus driver. I used to work for you guys. Started out at Ryder, I've been driving school bus 20 years now, and you guys came in and took over First Student, the Colmar. I still have people that I know that work there. I'm not here to trash you guys, but I left you guys to come here. You can tell, and I'm not saying you guys are bad. You're not. You really aren't. The hardest thing for me to come here was not getting my unemployment anymore. But there is a difference between a subcontractor driver and a district driver. There is a major... I've seen some of the people. I still have friends over at the Colmar thing. Central Bucks I drove out in. North Penn I drove out in. I've seen some of the people you hire. Not that we're like Queen Elizabeth or anything like that. It's just, it's not the same quality of people. Like the other day, last week, we had a mom. You guys didn't used to do this when I was there. We had a mom, and we have a lot of parents that are occasionally running late. They'll call in and say, Susie's mom's not here. I'll go around the block. Susie's mom, she goes around the block. Susie's mom's still not there. We wait. Do you guys do that now? Because back in the day when I worked there, you did not. So that, I mean, our main priority is our kids. I go to the same stops. I've had the same run for years. I know when I drop this student off, if Susie's mom's not there, whether she's a first grader or a second grader, I know that Susie's mom's not there. And if she's not there, I'm not leaving her. First student, I know, does not do that. You guys are only responsible for kindergartners, correct?
It depends.
No, it depends, but
District policy.
I do not leave a first or second grader if I know mom is there every day. Whether he's in second, first, third, or whatever. If mom is not there, I'm calling Mary Beth. Susie's mom's not here. I got a couple more stops. I'll go around. When I was with you guys at First Student, you did not do that. So that is my question. What is your policy on that?
In answer to that question, we follow what district policy is. Now, we do have some districts that say you don't have to see a parent for a kindergartner. We will not do that. But if the district policy says that you don't leave up through fourth graders without a parent, then we don't leave that student. We tell the driver to go, drop off some other students, and come back while we continue to try to contact the parent. So it sounds a lot like what you're saying you do here, but we default to what the district policy is on who can be left off with or without a parent there.
Now, the parent, if one of us has to sit there for a half hour, you guys charge for that?
No. No.
So you're not going to sit there like
Charge.
a bill at the end of the month? You guys can't do that.
No. No.
All right. Additional public comment?
Hello, my name's Limmer Mundy. I'm a bus driver. I was curious with the first student proposal, who's paying the gas? Is that included in their proposal?
The school district is purchasing the fuel for the vehicles.
Why is that?
Because the school district is a tax-exempt organization, it allows us to purchase fuel for cheaper, plus we participate through a consortium of school districts relative to bulk purchasing of fuel. We're able to do that at a greatly reduced cost versus what First Student we'd be able to do.
So it's basically a write-off for you? And my other question is, you don't want to answer that one, our bus aides, are they included in this contract?
No, they're not. They're MESPA employees. MESPA.
What does that mean?
Methacton Education Support Group. But yes, and that was explained several times to your UNISERV rep. We have no intention and have not done anything as far as outsourcing anything with our support staff contract at this time that we just settled.
Over here. Is that okay? I'm sorry, everybody. Hi. I'm Nicole Drake, for those of you that don't know me. I have a lot of kids in this school district, and I just popped in here from lacrosse track and everything else I was running to. Just to promise myself I wouldn't get worked up. I have a very, very medically fragile child. Some of you know that. These guys out here and these people out here, these drivers, what they have done for my kid. She left equipment. Her nurse rides to the school every single day with her. We have a private duty nurse 7 days a week. They ride on the bus with her. They ride home with her. One day, a very important piece of medical equipment was left on the bus, and it wasn't noticed right away until we went to use it. And at the same time, we're frantically panicking. Here comes the bus driver pulling up in his personal vehicle. I can't remember his name. He might be here. There he is. He pulled up into my driveway, and he brought my daughter's medical equipment in. That to me was something that speaks volumes. My concern, among everything else, and everybody has valid concerns, is the safety of our kids. I have 6 kids coming through this district. I'm one of thousands and thousands of kids, but my 6 mean everything to me, as they do to everybody else. I'm concerned for their safety, for budget cuts. I'd be willing to pay if I had to, just to keep this busing in this school district. My other thing is that I need to be ensured that I'm not going to have an issue with the bus company. And again, I know that I'm one out of many thousands, but that bus driver will sit there. Kate, I don't know if Kate's in here, but Kate, in the morning, my daughter needs a lot of medical equipment, and a lot of medical stuff has to be done to her before she can get on the bus. That bus driver will sit out front of my house and wait. They transport her directly to school. They unload her directly at school. On the return trip home, she's the first kid to get unloaded out of the school building, and she's transported directly to our driveway. It's those things that have made a difference. It's those things that anytime I've needed anything, the Smith Acton bus people here, they have responded to us, answered us, helped us out, and figured out a way to fix whatever issue has gone on. And that's all I'm asking from the bottom of my heart. Please, please, all of you, consider this. Please. Thank you.
Thank you. Additional public comment? Mr. Andrews.
John Andrews, Lower Providence. Thank you, Mr. Nascimento. I had 2 quick things. One is, there's an article in the Inquirer today about a case that is in front of the Pennsylvania Supreme Court, taking up a liability limit case with regard to a bus accident at Wissahickon. You may have heard of it a few years ago, where the bus ran over a young teenager, and she ended up losing her leg, and the courts in that case decided on some kind of a settlement north of $10 million, and the school district said, well, by state law, we can only pay out $500,000. Just presenting one view is that, if the Supreme Court upholds the current law, the liability to that district, I believe it's Wissahickon, is $500,000. Now, whether that's right or wrong, the law is the law, but if Wissahickon had had First Student or any other outside bus company, the liability would be paid by the bus company, not the school district, but the school district in the end would have to bear the increased premiums. The bus company is there for a profit, and they would pass on their costs. So, I think that with the present law, your liability is greatly limited compared to if you use an outside bus contractor. My second item is that this evening you have 6 directors here, and I think on an issue like this, you ought to reschedule your vote for when you can have 9 directors present. Thank you.
Additional public comment?
I'm sorry, can I ask a question of First Union? First, I keep saying that, First Student. I'm sorry, banking on my mind. I just want to ask two things. I think you said this in our last meeting. You're telling us that all of our bus runs are going to have the same bus driver for the entire school year. Is that correct?
That would be our desire to have that, yes.
I mean, mine is someone sick or has a personal issue. So.
Right. We'd like to assign them to the bus the beginning of the year and have them on that bus for the entire year.
And our plan is to hire all of our drivers that we have now, if they're willing, to go with your company so that they can drive our Methacton buses through these same routes.
Correct.
Okay. In this situation that Nicole just brought up, how do you address that? Can you address that for me and tell me how you deal with that?
Specifically to the special needs child?
To the fact, and also to the other person that spoke that said, you know, I have a student who, obviously I know it's our district policies that we have to deal with on our end, but if we have a student that the parent isn't there to pick up, I mean, I don't, you know, you don't deduct pay from them that they're waiting for a parent to pick up a child, something like that, where there's a medical need, if there is additional help that's needed. How is all that calculated into your bus runs and to the daily routines that have to happen?
Okay. So another benefit of the GPS system is it supports the driver in any additional time that they work. It's our policy. If they're working, if they're on the clock, we want to pay them. So if there's an extra need because of snow or because of having to wait for a parent or having to take a child back to a school, they are paid for that without question. And the GPS system supports that. Did that answer your question?
We won't change your policy, your current protocol. Remember, we want to hire every driver, not only sitting in this room, but that every driver, every employee that is currently working. So my statement would be, and I just use myself, if Randy Williams currently drives bus 12 that transports the previous speaker's child that has the medically fragile needs, Randy Williams is still going to continue to transport that child in the same manner with the same protocols and everything. If Randy Williams leaves, he decides, I'm going to retire, I'm not going to go with First Student, whoever is brought, whether another driver transfers to that run or we have to hire somebody to replace that driver, then they will be instructed on the same protocols and procedures. So we are not looking to make any changes. Oh, we're going to make these runs tighter. We're going to make them tighter. When the proposal was, the RFP was issued, everybody was issued an example of your runs, and that's what we based our schedules on as well. So we should have the sameness, for lack of a better term, going forward that you currently have now. Again, hoping that all the drivers and employees come over.
And you're saying that that protocol is based on our policy that we have in place? Because I do know I do have children in the district as well, and they have gone above and beyond when different things have happened with different kids. And I want to make sure that is still part of our policy within this district.
Your policies are what we will follow, and again, you're going to have a manager on site as well to ensure that we're following those, and Stuart, Mr. Whiteleather will be reviewing that as well. But you know, what the drivers do for this district, again, that's our hopes in hiring them all, is that they'll continue to provide that same service. Just because it's First Student or Randy's Bus Company or Methacton, we expect the same service to be provided.
So to add on to that, I'm a 30-year school bus guy. I actually started, actually it's more than 30 years, I hate to have to admit it, 30 years with this company. I started as a school bus driver in college in 1979, and one of my first groups of students that I drove were a group of autistic children, many of them in wheelchairs, and I grew to know them. You know, my first day on the job, I had a map, a list of the students, directions left and right, so where to go. And the first student on the bus, a kid named Jeff Rolfs, with cerebral palsy, could really had a difficult time verbalizing, but he actually led me through my route. I could have gone by the map. He led me through my route. By the end of the year, Jeff and I had such a good relationship. He was a high school senior at Minneapolis South High School, that after he graduated, I went to visit him at his house, and his parents invited me in because we just had that kind of a relationship. Our drivers do grow to love their kids, and I recognize that your district drivers love their kids. They're very, very dedicated people, and that's just all the more reason that we want them. And, you know, is every one of our drivers as dedicated? Perhaps not. But our people do love their children. They do get to know them. They do get to know the parents. They do go above and beyond the call of duty. They do notice when they get to a parent's house and the car's not there, because they know every day they pull up, there's a certain car there. Or they do notice that there's something wrong at the house. The front door's standing wide open. They know that there's something wrong, and they call into our dispatcher and they say, look, I need to make an exception here. I've got a problem. I'm not comfortable with it. Give me some advice, make a phone call for me. The school bus drivers are just a unique kind of people. They do it because they love what they do. They're passionate about what they do. And that doesn't necessarily come with working for a district or working for a first student. It comes with the type of people they are. They are just a unique and special people. And I just wanted to say that. Thanks.
Go ahead, sir.
My name is Jeff Butler. I live in Eagleville. I'm a bus driver, and I have a student in Eagleville Elementary. Mr. Whiteletter, I didn't catch whether you agreed or disagreed with Mr. Bickelman's assertion that 15% of the MESPA cost is reimbursed by the state. Is that true or not true? PSERS, sorry, PSERS.
Yes, that's correct. The state does reimburse the school district for half the cost relative to PSERS. I think the component that's missing out of that equation is that based upon the escalation in the cost of PSERS, even though the cost is offset half by the state, the sheer escalation and the percentage applicable to PSERS is more of the component of the conversation than it is the sharing of the cost. If you look back into 2001, 2002, the total rate paid on behalf of school employees for PSERS was a little over 1%. So if you equate that, say 0.5% for the employer, 0.5% for the state, that rate for next year is 21.4%. So even though you're equating the half value to the state reimbursing us, the point being is that the cost overall is escalating so rapidly that it's becoming a significant cost component relative to our operation as a school district.
Okay, I think we all understand that the cost is going up, but when I looked at your presentation, the presentation said 30%. It didn't say offset by 15%, which I think is quite misleading. Agreed? Agreed. Okay, another thing. When we were talking earlier about First Student's proposal, you had said that when we looked at our numbers, if First Student was going to replace 72 buses, then that's what we figured we would replace 72 buses. How many buses a year do we currently replace? On average, do you have any idea?
It varies greatly from year to year depending on the fleet needs, repair cost, the cycling of the buses prior to the point where we're in looking at the future year. It varies greatly from year to year. There's some years that we replaced 15 buses, there's other year we replaced 2 or 3.
Okay, I've been with the district for 6 years. There's no chance that we're going to replace 72 buses in the next 5 years. If we replace 6, 8, 10 buses a year, at the max, that number you had up there, or that projection in your budget, is misleading.
A lot is misleading.
Another thing that was a little bit misleading was somebody asked about video cameras on our buses, and you said we have, what was your reply, Mr. Weidler? A fraction?
I said some of our buses have cameras, not all of them.
Yeah, a fraction you said. Mostly every single bus has camera on it just now, so that is an expense that would be a lot less than maybe Mr. Whiteletter's leading on to for us to believe.
And they do work.
A question for First Student. In regards to, say, the special transportation for special needs, what are your policies for split custody? In other words, we have a lot of students who get dropped off at mom's house 2 days a week, dad's house the other days of the week, maybe mom's business. Is that something that First Student is going to continue?
Again, that policy is this district's policy.
That's district policy. That won't change.
If we transport to all those locations today, that's what we'll transport to in the future.
Okay, with no additional cost.
The costs were submitted based on our current routes that we provide today.
Okay, so if we have an onslaught of split custody, that's not going to change anything. That's on them.
I don't understand the question. If we route a child to a specific location today, we would expect the same service to be provided by a first student.
At no additional cost to us. Okay. So when you guys do decide, if you do decide to go to first student, I personally know a lot of drivers that aren't sticking around. They're just not going to do it. You want to keep a lot of drivers here, but what happens when the core of this group leaves? Who's going to be driving our buses? Yeah. Have you guys driven through Norristown? Have you seen first student buses? When Norristown boots first student, that from what I'm hearing they're trying to do, they're the people that are going to be driving my kid, your neighbor, your nephew. I'm not going to have it. I'm not saying I'm better than anyone, but I've seen those people. They don't look like they give two craps about their job. These people give a crap about their job. And what you guys are going to do is turn my career into a part-time job. Please think about it.
Any additional public comment on board action items? Okay, thank you. We'll now move on to item number 6, items for board action. The first item, 6.1, is the first student transportation. Dr. Zerbe.
And I will read it as it is to be recommended this evening, with an addition to the end of the statement based on the agenda. So it says this. It says, approve the transportation contract with First Student Incorporated for the period of time from July 1, 2014 through June 30th, 2019, pending solicitor review of the contract.
Okay, so we have a recommendation from the administration. Is there a motion to approve the transportation contract with First Student Incorporated from July 1st, 2014 to June 30th, 2019, pending solicitor review of contract? Okay. Is there a second? Maria? Discussion. Any discussion?
I would just like to say one thing. Everybody keeps talking about the 30% from the PSERS that the school district pays half, 15, and the state pays 15. Where do you think the state gets that money to pay that 15%? We're the taxpayers, so whether it's the school district or the state of Pennsylvania, we're paying 30%.
Any further discussion? Brenda?
On the actual motion itself, I'd like to see some more detail that says what the contract is. There's not a contract attached yet. I know we don't have that yet, but it doesn't give us cost or any deliverables or anything. I mean, it's just approve the contract, but there's no contract that we're approving.
Yeah, again, this is the motion that symbolizes the outsourcing and the intent for us to enter into an agreement. We will have the agreement reviewed by our solicitor, and then the information will be provided back to the board, and will be finalized at a future meeting. But we need to. The recommendation this evening is to move forward with this contracting.
Why? I'm sorry.
Do you have more?
I do need more. I do agree with Brenda. I would like to see this tabled. I think there's more discussion that needs to happen. I can't say whether it's going to go one way or the other. I think we are in the business of education here, and I think that's something we really do have to think about, everybody. It's terrible. I hate sitting here talking about it, but that is the business that we're in. However, I do think that we have some more questions that we need to review as a board. Somebody mentioned that there's only 6 of us here tonight, and that's true. There's not 9 of us. And I do think that we need more people and more time to discuss. I'm not saying this is going to take all summer. I'm not saying that we take this for another 3 months. It may be 2 weeks. But my opinion is that I think we need to table this and have some more items that we do need to see more apples to apples, as somebody said earlier, that we can actually sit and look at.
Did you have something else, or are you done, Brenda?
Well, just along the lines of Kathleen, I would like to offer a motion to amend the motion to table this at this point.
So you want to offer a motion to
table the motion.
Table the motion. Okay.
Yeah.
I mean, table the motion pending more
Information. Go ahead, Jim.
I understand where they're coming from on this, and if possible, have the contract so we can read it. Also, have it on the website so people can view it, and then take a vote on it. I mean, if we can do that, I'm fine with tabling it and letting everybody have a chance seeing it.
So let's just, for Samantha, let's just talk through this, because then maybe if the majority of the board wants to wait, then you don't need to make that motion, and Kim can withdraw her motion. Let's just get a sense of where we're at. I can't take a straw poll here, though, so.
I'll withdraw the motion. I'm all right with that.
Is that what, I mean,
And then we don't have enough to pass it right now.
we don't have enough to pass it if those 2 are not going to vote for it. Okay, so are you withdrawing the motion? Okay. Okay, so the motion to approve has been withdrawn. Please. Is there, so we need to take some action on this. So now do you want to make a motion? Well, or do we just let it, I mean, do you want to table this for further information, or?
Just take a vote to table. Well, if we table the motion, that means that it comes up for a discussion at a future time. My concern initially was that the motion itself doesn't have enough detail for us to really say, for me to really say I could be behind it. And in light of that conversation and the fact that we aren't going to have any more detail, what I'm saying is I would suggest we just table this motion until we have such detail. As you've suggested, that we get the contract and have it made available to the board and to the public so that we can then have a fair evaluation of it.
Well, let me suggest, Mr. Chairman, that what actually happens when a motion is made to table, that takes precedence over the main motion. Okay. So you have the main motion on the floor. You now have a motion to table. You should vote the motion to table. Okay. If the majority of the board agrees that the motion should be tabled, then it is tabled until at a future board meeting someone brings that issue back to the board and removes it from the table, at which point it can be acted upon. Okay, so for right now, you have a motion to table. Mrs. Hackett has made the motion to table.
Okay, so then we'll need a second to that then. Do you want a second then? Second motion, a second. Okay, we'll just take a vote on that and a discussion. All those in favor of tabling the motion?
Right.
Opposed? Okay, motion passes. So then we'll table this. We'll give direction to the administration to come back with further detail. We'll put this in front of us at our work session on May 20th. Everyone good with that timeline?
Yeah.
Okay. Next item on the agenda is item 6.2, gifts and donations. I will ask for a motion to approve a gift of temporary fencing from Methacton Baseball Association for the upper baseball field at Eagleville Elementary High School in value of $1,255.
So moved.
Second, Kathleen. Could we keep it down, please? So there's a motion and a second. Discussion. All those in favor?
Aye, and thank you.
Opposed? Unanimous. Okay. That brings us to courtesy of the floor.
Joe Ferrero, 12 Pine Tree Drive. A comment was made earlier about the pieces, Ms. Shackelford, stating that the tax money is the tax money. It is, and I agree with you 100%. And when you have a contract that goes to the outside world and it goes to a business where, say, the principals of the business are driving around in Mercedes or have fancy houses while the guys working for the contract don't have anything, those fancy houses and those fancy Mercedes are taxpayer-based or taxpayer-paid items that we didn't get the value as taxpayers out of. We get the value of the work when we directly employ the people who do the work for us. When we throw a middleman into the process, we lose value. And that's part of the problem here. When you outsource, you're giving money to who doesn't deserve it, when we can do it ourselves and we can do it right. We can make it work in Methacton. We have, and we should continue to. Thank you.
Thank you.
Hi, Joe Bickelman again from Audubon. I'm happy that you're tabling it, this issue, and I asked the board members to get the detail. You know, you're going to get a contract that's going to say so much for this run, so much for that run, so much for activities. Get the estimates from Mr. Whiteleather in total. You know, there's $7.2 million budgeted in the proposed budget for next year. I don't know what the projected payment is to first student in the first year. Does it approximate the $7.2 million? I mean, what's the, I mean, you do the comparison, you got to have a number. What's the first payment? Estimated payment?
I don't have it in front of me to answer that.
See, that's what you need. You need the numbers, the detail, then you need to scrutinize the contract, ask all the proper questions of administration, and get the numbers, okay? If you don't have a number that's estimated for the first payment, I don't know how you can consider a contract that you don't have. Sounds like the Affordable Care Act to me. You know? We voted on it, but we don't know what it means. So I'm glad you're taking the time to analyze, get the contract, analyze it, get the summaries, get the projections, and, you know, do it at a finance committee meeting. You know, kick it around at a finance committee meeting. And bring it through the process, not just, you know, 9 months went by since the beginning of the school year, and now we're talking about it in May, finally. All right, thank you.
Thank you.
From Audubon. I'm going to change up the topic a little bit to I guess more pleasant. And for all of you bus drivers, I don't want you to give up hope, and I want you to hear what I'm going to say. But on behalf of the Methacton wrestling parents, we can't thank the board enough for your commitment in investigating the non-renewal of AJ Maeda's contract as the Methacton head wrestling coach. You, the board, could have written us off. In fact, I was told by many that the board won't reverse the decision. They never do. And let's face it, wrestling is not one of those popular sports, so you had even less reason to not care about what we had to say. But as you heard and you read, we were not deterred from those challenges because we believed in AJ as a coach. And we wouldn't turn our backs on our coach, nor would we turn our backs on the wrestlers. But to our surprise, and still shocked, you heard what we had to say. And and you kept your promise to investigate and reinstated AJ Maida as the Methacton head wrestling coach. And that speaks volumes to your dedication to the Methacton School District, and I won't forget that. Again, on behalf of the Methacton wrestling community, I would like to express our sincerest gratitude. You gave the wrestlers back their coach, and to quote Devin Bradley, you gave Coach back his passion. In closing, I would like to extend an invitation to all of you to attend a wrestling match in the 2014-2015 year. Thank you.
Thank you. Go ahead, sir.
Hi, I'm Terry Ryan from Worcester. I again would like to echo Patty and extend kudos to the board. As I discussed with you in the two appearances that I made earlier, you know, a good procedure really needs to be in place for these supplementary duty assignments. And as Superintendent Zerbe related to us the other Saturday, he now has a charter to investigate and come up with a new procedure. And that's really a good thing, because there are gaps in this system, and they're on their way to being resolved. I also do want to mention for Superintendent Zerbe, he owned the decision right from the beginning. We recognize that it wasn't on his initiative, but he owned the decision, which also brought him a lot of flack. But when the decision was reversed, he also owned that too. He took total ownership, which is a sign of leadership, and I commend him for that. And I think he's new to the district, but it served to increase the confidence of parents and our respect for him that this type of leadership throughout the process was exhibited. We thank him, we thank you.
Thank you. Were you in line, or are you just standing?
I promise I won't cry again. I just want to say thank you. Thank you for taking the time to thoroughly look this through. And just remember that it's not just the black and white, it's about the kids. It's about some of them might not fit into the mold of just a normal standard bus route. So please, I appreciate it, and thank you so much for taking the time for that. That's all.
Thank you.
Joe Donahue with Audubon. I'd also want to thank the board for the decision that was made to reverse the decision for AJ as the wrestling coach. The one piece that I haven't heard, and I apologize if it's been communicated to you guys, but the message that you sent to us was one thing. The message that you sent to the boys that were impacted by this was enormous. You let them know that it was okay to stand up for what they believed in. You also showed them that systems do work, and they understand that there are proper channels to exhibit frustration, passion, opinions. We've got a lot of kids nowadays that don't know how to express themselves. We see it in the news and we read it in the paper every single day. So please don't lose, if you haven't thought about it, the message that you sent to those children, my son included. I can't thank you enough. Thank you.
Thank you. Any additional items for John?
John Andrews, Lower Providence. At a recent meeting, the board authorized an enrollment study by a vote, and I've yet to see anything on the website. There's a page on the website for vendor items, biddable items, and that's been blank. So I don't know whether bids have gone out or not, but one of the possible outfits out there is the Montgomery County Planning Commission, and they have an enrollment projection service. So I want to leave Mr. Whiteleather with a copy of their sales brochure. And also, I'm not aware that the companies that responded to the prior bid for enrollment services, where the board chose not to act on it, whether those companies were invited to bid. I fail to see, if the administration is doing a bid, why it's not open to all bidders. Thank you.
Thank you. Any additional courtesy of the floor? Candy?
Katie Alaba, Eagleville. First student said that they will abide by the school district's policies. Will they stay in place for 5 years, the length of the contract? Because I know the company, they have rules and regulations of how they run it and the bus drivers. And I just don't want to see in conflict where if the bus drivers try to abide by what the school district wants, but it may be conflict with the company itself.
Well, they'd be contractually obligated to abide by whatever the district policies were. So we could change them whenever we wanted, obviously, but
and they have to.
But they would have to adjust to that.
Oh, okay. So they have to follow your lead, right?
Yeah.
Okay, that's it. My question is, what happens after the 5 years and first student decides they don't want to renew the contract? We still have the buses, and I mean, it's a thought. I don't know what. I mean, we don't know what's going to happen 5 years down the road, and it was just something to think about. Another question. Is this going to help restore the late bus for the kids that play sports? Because initially the late bus was done away with to save us money. I don't know what the savings was, and there's a lot of kids that play sports. But I mean, I know the activities fees have dropped from last year to this year. I was just curious if that was a consideration of putting a late bus in, because I know a number of kids that did stop sports because they had no way home afterwards, and it's not like you can walk around here, it's not safe. My other comment is, Dr. Zerbe, I want to say congratulations. It was very refreshing to see you do the right thing about Coach Maida, because what was right was right. And you made a lot of people happy, and I'm not used to seeing that in the last couple of years. But I want to congratulate you. We have a wonderful wrestling program, from what I understand. I know you've gone to it, and a lot of people are happy. And on that note, from what I understand, the wrestling team is having a car wash on May the 7th at the Shell Station at Park Avenue, Rich Pike, and all the people that come out to support Coach Maida, maybe they all should take their car down that morning so the kids can go to summer camp. So I think that's what they're doing. That's a good way to support the wrestling team. Take the buses down, that's it.
Thank you. I'm going to go to the car wash and look for everybody in their Team Maida t-shirts just to make sure. Any additional courtesy of the floor? Do we have a motion to adjourn? Kim, second. Brenda, all those in favor? Opposed? We stand adjourned.